Alfred Perlman. I'm a railroad man, and I'd like to tell you something about our railroad and what we're doing on it. People tend to take the railroad pretty much for granted. We in the railroad business probably haven't told the story of the changing conditions in our...
I'm Phil Bell. I'm a railroad man too, and trains are in my blood. Today, railroads are telling the story of everything they do for America, right here on the All Aboard podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2025 New Jersey TransAction Conference. As always, I am your host of the All Aboard podcast by All Things Trains, Phil Bell, and I am back with you. First of all, I want to do this. I know I do it every day. It feels like it is apologize for the streaming difficulties that we had. Look, I am still new at the technical aspect of this, so I am sorry. From time to time, we are going to get it wrong, but more often we are going to get it right. But I wanted to give you a little overview of the New Jersey TransAction Conference, talk about why I'm here, and also talk about some of the interesting things that we have heard from Amtrak and New Jersey Transit. Now, the New Jersey TransAction Conference happens on an annual basis right here in Atlantic City, New Jersey. It used to be over the Tropicana Hotel. Now we are at Harrah's. And what they do here is have a lot of transportation industry professionals, companies who are, excuse me, selling products and services to the transportation industry, and that can be everything from paratransit, that can be people searching for underground cabling and so forth that would be disturbed during a project. That is the operators themselves, and so a good example of that are our friends over at the New Jersey Railroad Association, and I'm wearing, let me get this right here, wearing their pin here on my lapel as well. And so this brings a lot of folks together. And the reason why it's necessary is because, as you know, transportation is a very integrated industry, even if at times it feels like it is a disintegrated industry. And rail is always at the center of it, which is why it is so critical that railroads, podcasters like us and so forth be here to learn about what is going on in the industry, talk about it, and look at the impacts on others. Now, one of the biggest stories from the conference, as you saw in the earlier video, is the discussion of what happened with New Jersey Transit. Now, as you know, one of the big rail unions is the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. Now, of course, it used to be the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, now the BLE&T, and they represent New Jersey Transit's T&E, train and engine employees. And yesterday, they took a vote on a contract that had been agreed to by their leadership, as well as New Jersey Transit Management, including Chris Calori, who took over as the executive director of New Jersey Transit in January of 2025. Now, it is not unheard of, especially in recent years when you consider a lot of what it took to get a national freight rail contract with the BLE&T, the UTU, United Transportation Union, and so forth. It's not going to be easy to get these kind of agreements done. And that's because both sides have a lot of things to think about. Now, from the side of the railroad operators themselves, let's remember that whether you're talking about a publicly owned or publicly traded, I should say privately owned, but publicly traded freight railroad like Norfolk Southern, CSX, Union Pacific, you have the difficulty of dealing with the ups and downs of the operation. And that means there will be times in the year where revenues are up, and there will be times in the year when revenues are down. And although many people tend to think of this as being a business where the railroad itself, whether it's a privately held company or a public entity like New Jersey Transit, that they have a large amount of money just sitting around and they can always pay it out for whatever it is the employees want or partners want or anything like that. But the reality is that amount of money that is on hand is almost always relatively small. And that's because, like most businesses, when railroads bring it in, most of it gets turned around and spent back out immediately. However, just like you at your job, you have the folks who are doing a lot of the work, train engine employees in this case, they also would like to get a piece of that pie. And so that's why you saw very protracted negotiations with the last freight rail contract a couple of years ago. And that centered not only on the amount of money that employees could be earning, but also on some of the others, such as paid leave and so forth. That has become a big question mark throughout all of industry, but particularly for railroads, because let's remember, most people who are working on the ground for rail carriers are not working a 9-to-5 job, and they don't have set hours when they are going to be running. And so that's why we always, it's very easy for those of us who don't have to sit in a locomotive cab for our living to recognize the fact that while it might be great to have $1 million piece of equipment under your control and millions of dollars of equipment and potentially freight, and of course, people, if you're operating on a passenger railroad, under our control behind the locomotive itself, that it is a very, very difficult job. And so for decades, actually over a century, and going on to two, if you really think about it, you've seen a very strong and aggressive fight from both sides on what the pay is going to be and how that is going to be done. But what is unheard of is for 87% of the union rejecting the agreement. Now, why is that significant? First of all, that's, as Rush Limbaugh would say, getting absolutely skunked if you are union management. Because remember, their leadership, who are also members of that union, went and negotiated with New Jersey Transit's leadership, and they said, this is a good deal. This is something that we can take to our employees. And let's also remember that very same leadership is also elected by the rank and file. That means that this leadership, this group, and I do not know who they are, I don't know them personally or at all, but they have basically put themselves in a relatively difficult spot because they took an agreement that so many people were going to reject and very well should have known that. And this is the sort of thing that is going to take place from time to time. And by the way, Pat, please take anything you like. It's all free, especially my car. Well, you know what? If it was mine, I'd give it to you, but it's Mike Allen's over at the New Jersey Railroad Association. All right.
New Jersey Railroad Association?
Yeah, they're just down over there on the right. Yeah, there you go. Well, grab my card. We're actually live right now talking about rail in New Jersey. But
I don't want to be live.
no. I am, but I'm just saying the podcast is, yeah. But take my card and subscribe, yeah, to the All Aboard Podcast by All Things Trains. See, this is what happens at the New Jersey TransAction Conference, is we meet a lot of great new people. And Pat, it's a pleasure meeting you as well. No problem.
Thank you. I'm going to take some of your brochures.
Oh, please do. A couple of pieces I pinned from my other organization. Well, so 87% of the union rejecting this is substantial, and that really does mean that not only is there going to be a big renegotiation of the contract, but that very well could imperil those who are serving as leaders of the union that decided to put that forth. Now, and Mike, Pat here would like to buy your crossing sign from you, so this is the guy to negotiate with. But what's going to be even more significant about that is when we're thinking of the impact on New Jersey Transit's passengers. Remember, New Jersey Transit is one of the largest commuter railroads in the United States, and they play a critical role in linking New York City with North Jersey. And even in our post-pandemic period, so many people travel from the northern New Jersey suburbs into New York City to work on a daily basis, but then also on a very significant basis to relax, engage in leisure. So let's think about if you're going to see the New York Mets, my favorite baseball team, you're going to see the New York Yankees, you're doing all of that, there's a very good chance that you are taking New Jersey Transit, because even on a relatively slow day, crossing the George Washington Bridge, crossing the Lincoln Tunnel, crossing the Holland Tunnel, those are very difficult things to do, and utilizing a car in New York City is damn near impossible, even for those who are seasoned at doing it. And let's also not forget, right where we sit here in South Jersey, Atlantic City is linked to Philadelphia, again, also by New Jersey Transit. So a strike by New Jersey Transit's train and engine employees on their commuter rail service is a significant possibility starting in mid-May. And therefore, what's going on and what was discussed here by Chris Galuri, who is executive director of New Jersey Transit, is significant. What is also important to remember is that there's something called the sympathy boycott. So a lot of times you will have one union say, we've had it, we are going on strike, and set up a picket line. Then there will be times where some, if not all, from other crafts and other unions will then honor that picket line because they'll say our brothers, even if they're in another union, are being jobbed here, and therefore we want to stand up for them. So I want you to also think about bus drivers. I want you to think about those who conduct maintenance on the trains, the buses, and so on. Those all do have the possibility of being disrupted because of this. And that would mean a very, very substantial slowdown. And as the New Jersey Globe put it, another summer of hell for New Jersey commuters if this happens. And then let's also not forget, even if a strike does happen and after the strike is concluded, that generally does mean there is bad blood for some period of time there. And so that can make things uncomfortable for passengers as well. So that is an important story to keep an eye on. And we here at All Things Trains will do that for you. Now, on a slightly more fun note, I was able to attend a couple of sessions about Amtrak and the projects that they are doing in New Jersey on the Northeast Corridor. Now, if you followed the All Aboard podcast for long enough, you know we don't call it the Northeast Corridor here. We call it by what the Pennsylvania Railroad did, the main line New York to Philadelphia, at least in this area. This is the route that carries Amtrak's New York to Florida trains. It carries trains like the Cardinal between New York and Chicago. It carries the regional trains, which run between New York and Washington, D.C., as well as Boston to Washington, D.C., and into Virginia via New York City's Penn Station. It also carries the Keystones that go on out to Harrisburg after making a right turn, or actually it's technically a left turn because they go into Philadelphia's 30th Street Station and then pull out the other way, so they turn left to go on to Harrisburg, which is the capital of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So the main line, New York-Philadelphia, is a significant railroad for Amtrak. But then on top of that, let's also not remember this route also carries SEPTA's trains on that route as far as Trenton, New Jersey. And then it is host to a plethora of New Jersey Transit movements that go in and out of Penn Station. Now, in the pre-Amtrak era, these trains consisted entirely of the Pennsylvania Railroad's trains, and that was it. That's all that went in there. Now, of course, on the other side of Penn Station, or I should say also in Penn Station, you have the Long Island Railroad, and at one time you had the New York, New Haven, and Hartford operating above Penn Station going up to its namesakes, New Haven and Hartford, as well as Boston, which was the ultimate terminus for the majority of the NYNH&H's service. But now, in addition to the successor to the Pennsylvania Railroad services, Amtrak, as we've discussed, you have New Jersey Transit's commuter trains, again, successor to the Pennsylvania Railroad. That also includes those that are going down the shore, as they say here in New Jersey, the old New York and Long Branch, those commuter trains which branch off at Rahway to head east and then south down to Bay Head. And then you also have now, and this is very interesting, trains coming from the former Jersey Central on the Raritan Valley line and the former Erie-Lackawanna through the new connection that was built near Hudson Yards in the Newark, Weehawken area, that's Secaucus, excuse me, on the way to New York City. So over the years, you have seen the number of trains going in and out of Penn Station and utilizing that route grow significantly. And that has put an enormous strain on the infrastructure, much of which was put in place by the Pennsylvania Railroad in the early 1900s. And while it was maintained very well by the Pennsylvania as long as they could, and then as best as Penn Central could, and then certainly improved with the Northeast Corridor Improvement Project that took place in the late 1970s and in the early to mid 1980s. This infrastructure, while I don't agree with a lot of what they're saying is, well, this bridge has reached the end of its useful life, or that's reached the end of its useful life, it certainly has reached the end of its usefulness simply because the traffic levels are much higher than they used to be. Actually, Mike, would you mind handing me one of those calendars? I think the folks on the live stream would like to know. Just a quick break, because we've always got to do promos. This is the 2025 All Things Trains calendar. Now, I know a lot of you don't have it. A lot of you were tardy in getting it, and that's because we were tardy in putting it out. But it is right here. We're going to put it up on allthingstrains.com by next week so that you can pick one up. And because it's April, we're already getting close to the middle of the year. We got a cut rate price, just $5 if you'd like one. However, if you come see us at a train show or you come see us at the TransAction conference or any place we are, if we've got one, we will give it to you for free. So either get it from us online for $5 or come see us in person. You get it for free as long as you subscribe to the podcast. But a lot of the sessions, a couple of sessions that I attended focused on the projects that are taking place. One of the biggest ones that you've probably heard about is the Portal Bridge, which is not far. It's roughly between Newark Penn Station and New York City's Penn Station. If you've driven through the area on the New Jersey Turnpike, you've seen a new approach to the bridge, and you've seen a 3-segment new bridge that had to be built in New York State and then floated down the Hudson River and put into place. And what was so significant about this is not only were they working within the confines of what is basically a swamp, it is a big swamp full of cattails. And that's a little bit of an inside joke out there, because my first manager at Go Rail, she used to work in environmental science and really, really hated it when I referred to the New Jersey Meadowlands as a bunch of cattails. Perhaps I should have referred to it as where Jimmy Hoffa is buried, but I thought that would be maybe a little bit too much for it. That said, they had to work within those confines, and what was even more interesting is the segments of the new bridge had to be floated past the existing bridge. So that meant opening that bridge, which is not an easy thing to do, floating the new segments of the bridge past it, and then closing it, and doing all of this while the railroad remained active. So a lot of the conversation centered on what it took to maintain the ability of 200,000 person trips. And that's the number they're using, 200,000 person trips per day going over that route on that line, and to make that begin the process of that replacement. Now, that is due to open in 2027. So if you are a little bit of a railroad historian, if you're an enthusiast, or if you're just somebody that likes to see infrastructure, make sure that you take a trip between Newark, New Jersey and New York City Penn Station so that you see this bridge, which was originally put up in the early 1900s, around 1910 or thereabouts, when this route into New York City was originally opened. Because before that, of course, trains would terminate at what was called Exchange Place, Harborside Terminal in Jersey City, with the New York Central being the primary railroad that went into New York City on its own, of course, with the partner New York, New Haven, and Hartford. And the Pennsylvania, of course, blew up that duopoly and asserted itself very strongly with the opening